Well, hello everyone. Welcome in to a special edition here of an RTI, I guess not really a live show, but an RTI show, RTI podcast. I'm Nathaniel Rutherford, obviously the managing editor at RockyTopInsider.com. I'm joined by Abby Goodman here, who you've probably seen her before, and she's done stuff with us before in the past with Rocky Top Insider. But now, Abby, I'll let you tell us what you're doing. But you've obviously haven't done anything with us in a while, but you wanted to come back on, and we're welcome to have you back on here as a guest to talk about Tennessee football. But let everybody know what you're doing now and kind of where they can follow you before we get started here.
Yeah, so I currently work with Rachel Barbeau on Changing the Narrative. If you've heard of Rachel Barbeau, she's a big-time sportscaster for SiriusXM and the college football playoff influencer. So I have been given an opportunity to intern for Changing the Narrative, which has been a very, very exciting and influential experience this entire time. And it's been honestly amazing.
Good. Yeah. I mean, I've followed the stuff you've been doing. You obviously don't do writing stories or anything like that with her, but obviously I keep in touch, and I've been keeping up with Rachel and what she does, and she does really good work. But you and I got to talking the other day. Actually, it was before the Florida game, so it was a week or so ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago, about getting on doing something, whether it was a podcast or something like that. And I thought we could try this out and do a kind of a video thing, since we've been pushing our YouTube channel a little bit harder lately. But Abby, let's talk about your favorite Tennessee football player. If any of y'all watched the RTI live shows we did on Periscope and on Facebook Live, last season, everything when Abby was doing more with us, we're listening to the RTI Premium podcast when we were still doing that. You'll know that Abby's favorite football player right now and has been for the last year is Jarrett Guarantano. She just loves Guarantano, not to bash him or anything like that, but Abby obviously is not a huge fan of what he brought to the quarterback room. Not during last season, and not during the whole off season when you were still doing stuff with us. And Abby, right now, he is in the midst of a huge, debate around Tennessee's quarterback position. You have a lot of people obviously siding with Brian Maurer, wanting to see him get the start, wanting to see Tennessee, turn the offense over to him. You also have people saying maybe Tennessee should do maybe like a platoon system where they have Guarantano and Maurer both playing, and maybe all three of the guys playing, whether it's Guarantano, Maurer, and Shroud. So before my thoughts have been pretty well known on this. I wrote a column on it on Sunday. Ben McKee and I talked about it in the last podcast, and I'll obviously give some more thoughts here. But I'm curious in your thoughts on Guarantano to start the season, and also what you think Tennessee should do here during this bye week, and then moving forward into against Georgia, against Mississippi State, against Alabama, but specifically I guess the next game. What do you think Tennessee should do? So just kind of your thoughts on the quarterback situation, and then where Tennessee should go.
I think Tennessee's in a difficult spot with their quarterback situation right now. They don't have a guy that has a ton of experience besides Guarantano. I know everybody knows the way his name is actually supposed to be said now. I'm not used to it. But I know that Tennessee's not in a very good spot with that quarterback situation because their guys don't have a ton of experience besides him. And the experience he does have, I don't necessarily want to call it quality experience, because he has been in some pretty rough situations with the offensive line situations that's been going on. Like, he's been going through it, so to speak. And I think that he's in a place where he's definitely going to have to learn a lot more. But where I'm at with it, watching the Florida game and seeing Brian Maurer come in and seeing him take a leadership role, a more active, more vocal role than I have ever seen Jarrett Guarantano do, I was very, very impressed by that. And I think there's a lot to build off of, just that leadership to start off with. But on the other hand of that, I do understand why Vol fans would want to keep JG in the game, because he does have so much experience, whereas Brian Maurer doesn't. He's a young kid. What do you expect of him? He is most likely going to get that little bit of culture shock.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting debate to have, because you can legitimately make the argument, in my opinion, and Ben has, he argued this actually earlier this week. You can legitimately make the argument that Guarantano, when he's obviously playing better than when he's played this first 4 weeks, he gives Tennessee their best chance to, still somehow turn this season around and, not obviously win against Georgia and Bama, but win games against Mississippi State and South Carolina and Vanderbilt and Kentucky, and, and get Tennessee maybe to 5 wins or maybe even push for a bowl game. But my counter to that would be, I'd say that would be very true for the 2018 version of Guarantano. We haven't even seen 2018 version of Guarantano at any point this season, in my opinion. And I've been, Abby, you and I have gone back and forth on it. I've been a big, JG defender as far as I think I thought, and I still think he got too much blame for things that happened last season. Mm-hmm. But this year, Tennessee, if they get even really just average or slightly above average quarterback play in the first 4 weeks of the season, they're 3-1, or at worst they're 2-2. They wouldn't be where they are right now if Guarantano had played just a little bit better against Georgia State. Obviously, the defense was the bigger issue there, but if he played even remotely like what he did in 2018 against BYU, Tennessee wins that game, and they probably win it by a couple of scores. So I think I don't know that another couple weeks of practice are really going to turn things around for Guarantano, and even if he gets the start against Georgia, I think you got to play Maurer, and I think you got to get him snaps against Georgia, Mississippi State, and Bama, because honestly, I think Maurer might give you the best chance. And he's not been great, and Trout hasn't been great. Neither one of the guys have been great when they've been in there. But with the way Guarantano's playing, I don't know that unless he can find something, I don't know he gives you the best chance to win, honestly.
I don't know that you continue to put in a guy that's showing you that, as rough and abrasive as this sounds, he's getting increasingly worse. Yeah. That's a problem to me. I don't know that you continue to put in a guy. The situation that Tennessee is in right now, they're still in that rebuilding process. And people can argue that they're not, they are. And you're in that place where you've got to get, in my opinion, I think Maurer is the best in the quarterback room at this current moment. You've got to continue, and I'm not saying that athletically or skill wise. I'm just saying, I think he shows all around he is the best package. But I think that you're going to have to get somebody on the field that you can get experience, that you can start to build this team around. And I don't think Jarrett Guarantano's it, considering, like I said, he just continues to show increasingly worse play. I think that having a guy like Maurer on the field, I'm a very, very, as anyone else knows, I'm a very critical quarterback person. Mm-hmm. Welcome to my world. But I think that at this current moment, he's the only guy that has a full package. He's the only guy that, as a freshman, you can come onto the field, tell your receivers to move out, go up to your line and talk to your line. There's so many things that I saw him doing in the Florida game when he first came in. I think the thing that really got to him is it's your first game in the swamp. You're a freshman and the pressure's on. I think that's truly what happened, because in that first 3 drives, I'm not going to say I wasn't impressed with his play, because I was. I do know it kind of went downhill from there, but at the same time, I think a lot of it was the pressure kind of started to get to him. I think getting him more snaps and getting him in those bigger time games, I don't expect Tennessee to come in and win against Georgia. I don't expect them to come in and win against Alabama. None of those things are going to happen. But I do think that those are good opportunities to get the young guy in and get him some snaps, get him, some game time under his belt so he can learn and kind of get rid of that under the light shock going forward.
Yeah, and like you're saying, Maurer, he wasn't like he was an all-star when he came in. He made several throws where he threw the double and triple coverage. And he had the one interception. He could have had a couple of those other passes picked off. But at the same time, I watched what he was doing, and I know that the play calling was a little simpler when he was in there because, he's a true freshman. He doesn't have the depth of understanding that obviously Guarantano does. But when I watched both of them play, I didn't notice Maurer making any different mistakes than what Guarantano has been making this season. And that's the kind of the bizarre thing. And I'll ask you a question about that here in a second. But that's been kind of the bizarre thing to me is we're seeing Guarantano make mistakes this year that he didn't make last year, and that he wasn't even making necessarily as a redshirt freshman in 2017. So I think at one point in time you could still, I guess, argue this, that Guarantano, is safer, that he's the guy who's not going to turn the ball over as much. So if both these guys are making kind of the same mistakes, you go with the guy who is, not going to turn the ball over more. But Guarantano's been pretty turnover prone here in the first 4 weeks. You take out the UTC game and look at what he's done against FBS competition. He's thrown at least one interception in every game he's played in this year, and he could have had one picked off against UTC. He could have had at least a couple other ones picked off, I think, against Georgia State and BYU. He had one called back, I think it was against Georgia State, or it was against one of those games. He had one called back that because of a penalty that was just a really bad interception. He also obviously threw a couple against BYU that were both pretty bad. And then obviously the one against Florida, that wasn't necessarily his fault. The first one wasn't. That was picked off by when Juwan Jennings couldn't catch it. But that second interception was a huge miscommunication. And obviously, the one that's been talked about the most, that missed throw to DWA when Wood Anderson was wide open. And like I said, Maurer threw a pick. He threw it, tried to force it into a window that just wasn't there. But he made a couple of good throws. And I mean, I just think that with, like I said, I don't know if it's a mental thing. And I'll ask you this because you've played football, you've played other sports and stuff like that too. You've been around athletes a lot, whether it's, playing with them or interviewing them and everything. You've been around sport, for most of your life.
Yeah.
What you've seen from Guarantano this season, obviously, to me, I don't think it's a physical thing. I think it has to do something. I don't want to, I don't like speculating a whole lot on a athlete's psyche, but when I watch him, it just seems like a mental thing because Dave Bartu, who does really good analytics stuff, he tweeted at me actually it was yesterday. He tweeted at me and said, looking at Tennessee's offensive efficiency numbers, they're I think they're top 30 in all of college football in the first quarter at offensive efficiency. Then the second quarter, it's in the 80s, which is bad. And then the second half, they're in the 100s in both the third and fourth quarter. And every time Ben McKee has done kind of film analysis stuff from games for Tennessee this year, he's noted that Guarantano's had pretty good starts to the game, most of the time, except for maybe the Georgia State game. He's had good starts where he's making good throws and he's doing well in the first quarter and into the second quarter. It's when he makes a big mistake, whether it's an interception or a missed big throw, suddenly he can't get past it for whatever reason. And that wasn't the case last year. At least if it was, it didn't manifest itself in the way it has this year. So to me, it seems like a mental thing, and I'm curious kind of your read on the situation.
I agree with that completely. I do think it is a mental thing. But also, and I don't want to just blame him, let's look at Tennessee as a whole. Tennessee as a whole has always historically been one of those, they have a big mistake, they don't know how to come back from that.
Yeah, at least recently, yeah.
Okay, so think about it that way. The biggest guy, the guy that's supposed to be your fearless leader, that's supposed to accomplish all these things and get all these things done as your quarterback, make good passes, not make boneheaded mistakes, not turn the ball over. Your fearless leader, he's still struggling from that. That's a problem. And it translates to more than just your quarterback. When your quarterback struggles with that, it translates all across the field. But I agree with that completely. I do think, and I hate to go into an athlete's psyche like that, but I could agree with that completely. I see a guy that makes one mistake and can't forgive himself for that mistake. And it's super, super frustrating, I know, for Vol fans, because it's okay, you made one mistake. People turn the ball over. People get sacked. Sometimes interceptions happen. Things happen. It's football. The ball doesn't always go in your favor. The refs don't always throw flags in your favor. But that's what happens. But you have to figure out how to adjust and how to adapt and how to, handle adversity when it comes. And I think that right now where he's at, I don't think he's confident enough to handle adversity like that. And I'm very curious as to why, because I don't think we saw that much of that last year, but we're seeing a ton of it now. And it's almost like like I said, he's getting increasingly worse, but it's more so he's so unconfident in his play right now that I don't necessarily know how Tennessee goes about fixing that. I don't know how the coaching staff goes about fixing that, because it's an issue with him personally at this very time, because he needs to figure out how to handle mistakes and continue to move on and keep trucking down the field and keep handling those problems. Because if he can do that, I think he does stand a good chance. He has shown some good, ability in some circumstances. I laugh when I say that, but he has some ability. He just can't get past those mental mistakes and those mental errors, and to continue to show those things. If he can do that, I think he'll be in good shape. But other than that, if he can't get past it, I think it's time to move on from him, because you do see a guy that, like I said, in Brian Maurer, he comes onto the field and he's a leader. You see him making mistakes. I believe those are boneheaded freshman errors. I don't firmly believe that those are, you're a bad quarterback, you don't know what you're doing. I genuinely think he is a freshman, and that's what you're going to get from him. At the same time, with that being said, I would much rather Tennessee have a very vanilla offensive play call right now with having Maurer in than have some, extravagant play calling and doing a lot of great things. Tennessee can't accomplish that regardless. So bring it down to the simplistics and play Maurer, I think, is what you do going forward. and then see what he can do. And when things take a turn, put Guarantano in and see what he can do. But bringing it down to simplicity so that either one of them are both kind of limited on the mistakes that they can really, truly make. Because if you can play simple football, I think you can do some things in the SEC. I think bringing it down to that, it'll help both of them a whole lot going forward. And if they can start the game off well and continue to start it off well going into the second half, I think that Tennessee does not necessarily stand a good chance going forward as they hit the gauntlet of their schedule, but I think that they can compete. I don't think they win. I think they compete.
You were talking about play calling there, and it was interesting, like I said, to see how the play calling changed a little bit with Maurer in there. But even with Guarantano being the guy on the offense, not just against Florida, but against, other teams too, it's not like Tennessee this year. They haven't really, I don't know, I think partially maybe it's Jim Chaney not trusting Guarantano or what it is, but they haven't really aired it out a whole lot. I don't know if you've noticed that too, but they haven't thrown a ton downfield. And they didn't do that a lot last year, but they did it more than they have this year, because obviously the game that will stick out to you would be the Auburn game. Tennessee threw it downfield more, obviously against Kentucky as well. And I struggle to remember a lot of the losses, but I do remember in the South Carolina game, they didn't. That one's one where it sticks out to me. They didn't throw the ball downfield a ton. That one relied more on the short passing game and kind of quick throws and some runs and stuff there too. And I thought that was in a very effectively called offensive game. That game Tennessee lost was because the defense couldn't stop South Carolina's rushing attack. But to me, it's been interesting to watch how Jim Chaney has differed this year. And I don't know what that is. Maybe it's speaking to the fact that maybe Chaney doesn't trust Guarantano. Maybe Chaney doesn't. Maybe it was at first maybe not trusting the offensive line, but I think the line's gotten better. In fact, I was surprised by how pretty well they played against Florida, with it being kind of their first time facing an NFL caliber kind of pass rush.
Yeah.
I thought the line held up really well, all things considered. But that, to me, you didn't really see Tennessee attempt like a 15-plus yard pass much, if that. I'm sure I think they did, but not very often against Florida until the second half when Brian Maurer came in. And that was interesting to me to note that they weren't doing it until they put in the true freshman who, he's making his first pass against SEC defense, and some of his early on they're making short passes, but then he completed that. I think it was like a 17-yard pass to Palmer on 3rd and long. They didn't open up the offense a little bit more until they put in Brian Maurer. That to me has been very curious to see, why Jim Chaney hasn't, kind of opened up a little bit and what the reasoning is behind that.
Yeah, and that's I think a lot of that has to do with what's going on in practice, what's going on in the locker room, what's being, behind closed doors, what's going on, which is, I think it's kind of strange too, because I do think you are going to have to throw some different kinds of plays in there to play against these SEC teams. Like I said, this is the gauntlet of your schedule. You're really going to have to play to the best of your abilities, and almost Tennessee's going to have to play perfectly, and that's not even to win, because I truly don't think where Tennessee's at right now, they come out very, very well in these times. I'm not saying that to be negative. I just think they are in such a rebuild. This is the time when the younger underclassmen, this is where they learn. This is where they learn to play in the SEC. This is where they learn to be Tennessee athletes. This is where they learn to, deal with play calls, deal with boneheaded mistakes being made and coming back from those things. This is the time for these younger guys to learn. Everyone wants, Jeremy Pruitt to go out there and recruit the best guys. Okay, he's gone out and done some of that. Now this is the time where those best guys, they still have to learn, even if they're the best guys. And this is the time that they need to take to learn. So I think they are still going to have to open up the playbook just a little bit. Tennessee's definitely going to have to spread the field a little bit more, because while I do think short passes are kind of the way to go with these guys right now, because they aren't being very effective on very many things, I do think you're going to have to spread the field, because if you don't, it's going to cause some problems going forward. You're not going to get any yardage. You're not going to be able to get into the red zone. You're not going to be able to do very much. And that's where Tennessee is at right now. They're in a difficult situation where they can't capitalize on opportunities, and they definitely can't finish. And that was something that we dealt with last year, is they couldn't finish. And it's kind of the same thing. So I think this is the time where Tennessee needs to learn. They need to grow, and they need to learn to finish specifically.
One last thing on the quarterback debate here before we can move on to one more topic before I wanted to end the video here. It's all well and good when you start to talk about, should Brian Maurer start? Should JT Strout start? Should they bench JG? But the coaches aren't just, I mentioned this in my column too, and I think Jason Swain this week on his shows, the Swain Events, mentioned it and did a good job talking about it. But you can't just give the job to one of these guys. They have to earn it. And
Yes.
that's also, this isn't all on JG. Why hasn't Brian Maurer with the opportunity right there with the starting job? I mean, it's open at this point for sure. But even before this week, it was, with JG the way he's playing, it could have been his. Why hasn't Maurer been able to win the job? Why hasn't Schrapp been able to win the job? So to me, it's not just on Guarantano and the coaches. I mean, the coaches obviously haven't seen enough in practice to just hand it over to Maurer and trust him to run it, because, I mean, you can't just give someone the job. We saw players get given jobs under Butch Jones, and we saw how that ended. That's part of the reason why Tennessee's culture is still so messed up, is because things like that, and obviously a bunch of other stuff happened. But that was just one of many things that messed with the culture at Tennessee was Jones and his previous staff just giving jobs to guys because even they didn't earn it. If you just give the job over to Maurer or Stroud or whomever and without them earning it in practice, that's going to send a message to a bunch of other players that, hey, I don't have to perform well in practice. I can make my case to the coaches saying, hey, I'm just a gamer. Put me in the game, and then you'll see what I can do. And then they're not going to try hard in practice. So to me, part of this is also to blame on Maurer for, hey, what have you not been doing correctly in practice to make yourself more appealing for the coaches to put you in?
Oh yeah, that is a huge thing right now, is what's going, and like I said, what's going on behind these closed doors that we as Vol fans, as media people, we don't know about, because there's something going on as to why he hasn't won the job. And there's something going on as to why Jarrett Guarantano still does have the job. I think that it's a really weird place right now. And I'm sure everyone else is, we're all curious as to what's going on. But it's one of those things where none of us are going to know until something comes out, whatever. Not saying there is anything being hidden, but none of us are going to know. And even then, it might be one of those cases. Guarantano is a baller in practice, gets to game time, and the lights come on, and it's like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. Not that he doesn't know what he's doing, but it's kind of one of those, oh, crap, I don't know.
Right.
How do I play football? Where it might be the same thing for Brian Maurer. He might be an okay guy in practice. The lights come on. He can get some things done because he's a good football player. He's a good athlete, but he's a freshman and he's a baby. And he really, if anyone doesn't know what they're doing or shouldn't know what they're doing, it's him of all people, because this is the time he should be learning. And he doesn't have someone to learn from. That's the other thing that I think is going to be really frustrating going forward. Yes, he has great coaches, but he does not have a leader to truly learn from in Jarrett Guarantano. And I'm not questioning his ability to lead, but I am questioning his ability to help mentor the next generation of quarterbacks in this Tennessee quarterback room.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate for Tennessee because, well, for one, they're not just one position fix away from changing the season. But I will say, like I said, good quarterback play. You're at 3-1 right now, and you were, maybe lose by 10 to 14 points to Florida. But at the same time, I mean, they don't. I truly believe they just don't have a great answer at quarterback. And that's not to bash the young guys. That's more to point out that they're young. Brian Maurer was a borderline kind of 3-star, 4-star guy, but he and Stroud both came in as projects more or less, because Maurer had really good senior season, but he played an offense that was pretty basic. It was kind of a high school offense. Most high school offenses aren't the most complex. He never took a snap outside of the shotgun. Like, he was always in shotgun. And kind of as a spread, kind of a 1, maybe 2 read type of offense. And the competition he was playing against, yes, it was in Florida, but it was not one of those very super talent-rich parts of Florida. He wasn't playing against very good competition for the most part. JT Stroud, on the other hand, over in California, he was a guy he's had a cannon of an arm for a long time. He caught the attention of Cam Newton as a sophomore in high school at a summer camp thing. He's got a really good arm, and for, by all accounts, it looks like he's got a decent kind of just play in the pocket. He's not super mobile. That's kind of an issue people have with Guarantano too. And he's just wildly inaccurate. I mean, you saw that when he was in for briefly against UTC. He could throw some really good passes, and sometimes he was, I think, 3 of 9. Not every single incompletion was his fault. But man, I mean, he had one pick that got called back. I think he threw another one. No, he may not have thrown another one. He had one that was called back that was a really bad pass, and he was kind of lucky he didn't get a few more picked off. That's just been the biggest thing, is, as you mentioned, in the offseason, there wasn't, from anything I saw in practice, from anything I ever heard from any of the coaches and players, there, and just not things I would say publicly, but things I've heard privately too, there was no indication this offseason that the way Guarantano is playing now is what they were expecting from him coming in. I mean, I don't think they're expecting him to be, like an all SEC candidate or anything like that. But they weren't expecting the way he's done. It was truly flabbergasted people at UT with how he's played. And, the reason why Mauer and Strout weren't thought of as more than just backups during the summer and fall is because of what I just mentioned. They're inconsistent play, both of them's inability to keep the ball safe. And that's one thing you thought Guarantano could do for you, because you saw last year, 3 picks and 240 something pass attempts. He had the best interception ratio in the SEC. That's including guys like Tua Tagovailoa. It's including guys like Jake Fromm and Drew Lock in the SEC last season. And Guarantano had a better interception rate than any of those guys. So you can count on him to not turn the ball over. Then what's he do this season? He goes out immediately against Georgia State, has a interception, has a fumble. Then he goes against BYU, he throws 2 picks. And like I said, doesn't play a whole lot against UTC, looks better against them. That's an FCS school. You think he should. And then goes out and throws 2 interceptions. Obviously, one not necessarily being his fault, but throws 2 interceptions against Florida. So he's not taking care of the football the way he should. Actually, I think I miscounted his interception count there, but whatever it is, he's got 4 picks this year. Here, his actual stats right here I have in front of me. He has thrown 4 interceptions and 93 pass attempts this season, when he threw 3 in 246 last year. He had 5 interceptions in his first 2 years of football, and that was with him throwing 139 pass attempts as a redshirt freshman. 246 last year, had 5 interceptions in those 300 plus pass attempts. He's thrown 4 and 93 this season. So, I mean, I like I said, I just don't know that Tennessee really has a great answer at quarterback, or really maybe even a good answer at quarterback this year. But from what I've seen from Guarantano, I genuinely do not trust that he can get back on track and get really back to what he was like last year. I just don't see it.
I don't trust that either. And this is the other thing that I think a lot of Vol fans are going to have to think about. Bringing in a grad transfer. We talked about this last year we talked about this last year multiple times, and it was one of those things where it was kind of like, I don't think this is a good solution. I still don't think that's a good solution. All you're going to do is put a Band-Aid over this. Right now, all you can do at this point is let these guys learn. Let the younger guys learn, like I said. And trust me, I'm a Vol fan, and this is, the non-reporter part of me speaking, but I am a Vol fan, and I want Tennessee to win. I want them to do whatever it takes to have to win. But at the same time, I want them to be able to win consecutively in consecutive years. I don't want them to win in 2020 and then turn around in 2021 and they're in the same boat they're in this year because they lost whoever. I don't want them to be in that situation. So I think that right now is the best time. Train your guys, figure it out, rebuild, use this time to rebuild, because I truly believe everyone still understands that Jeremy Pruitt and the rest of this football program is in a rebuilding phase, because they have a ton of new coaches in. Rebuild your program and continue to do what you're doing so that you can translate it in 2020. This is just another year rebuilding for this program. And I expected more. I do want to say that, but I'm not shocked by it, if that makes any logical sense.
Yeah, it does. And I want to talk about a couple of other stuff here, but I'm going to go ahead and kind of finish off on this quarterback conversation, because we've gone for a good almost half hour at this point. I think, I don't want to go on too much further than that, because the video, I just don't want to go super longer than what we have. But speaking of Guarantano, you talked about bringing a grad transfer, and I agree with you. I think they made the right call for what they were looking at for the roster wise this past offseason of not bringing in a grad transfer, because if you do that, you're taking a spot away from the 2020 class. And at least heading into the season, you thought, hey, this 2020 class could be a really good, really good class. I think it still can be a very good class. And I think overall, I would agree with the decision to maybe not bring in a grad transfer to save that spot for the 2020 class. But also, I don't know that Tennessee was. I don't know if they were really in on a grad transfer that really could have maybe unseated Guarantano, because Jalen Hurts wasn't going to come here. Justin Fields wasn't going to come here. You didn't. I think they maybe had. They contacted Hurts. Obviously, I know that for a fact. But he wasn't going to come here because he didn't have a chance to win. You were going to get Kelly Bryant. There were a couple other guys that maybe they contacted. And they did bring in before the season started. I believe right before it started in fall camp, Kasim Hill from Maryland. But he's walking on he's not eligible this season. He's sitting out. So he's a guy you look at next year as a possibility. Then that kind of leads me to looking at next season to talk about Jarrett Guarantano and where maybe his future lies with Tennessee, because Abby, you and I both, I don't think, see him having a big turnaround this year and, kind of saving his career, saving the season for Tennessee. He could do that. And I would be very happy for him and obviously very happy for Tennessee if he could. But I think the odds are of that not happening. The odds are maybe him getting benched at some point and him not being the starter by the time the season's over with. At that point, I think it would be in everyone's best interest for him, for Tennessee, for the coaches, for the players here. I would wish him nothing but the best, but I think it would be in everyone's best interest for him to maybe be a grad transfer and to go somewhere else, because he's obviously a redshirt junior. This is his 4th year. He will be graduating, I believe. If he hasn't already, I think he will be graduating in the fall or maybe in the spring, whatever it is. He graduated. I thought so. Yeah.
Yeah, he graduated in December.
Okay, I was thinking he did. I think it'd be best for him and for everyone for him to look elsewhere and to go somewhere else. And that to me leaves a very very interesting question for Tennessee's quarterback situation next year. But I want to get your thoughts on that. I assume, like if you're saying you would agree that he should, but just kind of what do you think? What do you think the prospects are of Guarantano being able to turn things around, and maybe that not being the case, or maybe even if he does turn things around, do you think he's better off even transferring after that?
That's a really good question, and that is how people answer questions when they don't want to answer them. That's a really good question. I think at this current moment, the best thing that he can do, I don't see him turning it around. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't, because like I said, he's only getting increasingly worse. And I don't know what that is. I don't know what the reasoning behind it is. I don't understand it, because you would think that you're getting better and better. I don't understand it. But what I will say is I think that, unfortunately, I think he's going to have to make a move somewhere. I don't think Tennessee's the spot for him anymore, just because I feel like even Tennessee is ready to move on from him. They've seen this game play out one too many times, and it's unfortunate at this point. So I think this year going forward, like I said before, is the best thing you can do is train your younger guys like Brian Maurer, like Stroud, to move forward. Next year, it's going to be a very interesting year for Tennessee. It's going to be another rebuilding year. I'm sorry to burst anyone's bubble who thinks otherwise, but it's going to be another rebuilding year, because if Jarrett Guarantano is to leave and Brian Maurer is to become the starter, just hypothetically speaking, you are still dealing with a sophomore who, yes, he's got some time under his belt, but he doesn't have very much, and he still has to learn from it. So I say that to say this. I think the best thing for him to do would kind of be to start looking at other avenues, looking at other options, seeing what they have. And I don't love the transfer portal, but this would be an opportunity for the transfer portal being a good opportunity for him to just see and get some feelers for it. Other than that, I think Tennessee is going to have to make some moves, and next year is going to have a weird taste for Vol fans. Not necessarily a bad taste, but a weird taste in Vol fans' mouth, a weird taste in, this program's mouth, and it's going to be super interesting to watch, but I am very interested to see what happens.
Yeah, and I am too. And we have a bunch of different stuff we can talk about with coaching, with where Tennessee goes this year, with the transfer portal. I mean, there's stuff you and I could talk about for, hours at this point. But we'll go ahead and stop this video here. We appreciate all of you tuning in, and Abby, I appreciate you so much for being a guest with us this week. For maybe a new thing we'll be starting here, doing kind of a video thing on RTI on our YouTube channel, and obviously putting on our site and everything too. But I'm Nathaniel Rutherford. That's Abby Goodman. You can follow us. You already hopefully are subscribed to us on YouTube. If you aren't, go down and subscribe to us and check us out here. We have all kinds of practice videos, podcast stuff like that as well here on the channel. We have a Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and obviously website. We're Rocky Top Insider on all of those. We're also RockyTopInsider.com for our website. And Abby, you have a Twitter if you want to plug that, or plug anything else that people are going to find stuff you do, and anything else.
Yeah, so all my social media is at Abby with 1B. And yeah, go ahead and follow me. I'd love to keep up with you guys. Tweet at me. Ask me questions. I'll ask you questions. I'll poke a lot of fun at you all the time on Twitter. But yeah, ask me questions, and I would love to get to know all of you guys.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll be back again maybe sometime in the future.